And we are on. Oh, thank you so much for joining us today. We have got a great show lined up for you. This will be called the BounceBack Leadership Show. And I'm so glad that you're on with us today, or I'm so glad you're listening in. And if you're listening in, please let us know. Tell us hashtag live if you're listening on live. If you're listening on replay, put an hashtag replay. Let us know where you're coming in from. That would be great. We've got so much great stuff coming up for you today. I am so thankful, so grateful. I'm so emotional. What we have lined up for you today, and for the next, I don't know how long to come. We have so much goodness and so many great things that are coming for you. And I'm just glad that we can do this and that we can share these moments with you. So anyways, our guest today is somebody that knows a lot about bouncing back. He has been able to bounce back, and he has built a successful company over the last 3+ years. And I'm going to let him introduce himself, and he can talk a little bit more about how he has done that and what he has done and how sometimes it all hasn't gone perfect. And without any further ado, I want to bring on our guest today, Mr. Austin Grammon.
Ooh. In the house.
It's so good seeing you this morning.
Oh, it's so good to be here. What an honor. This is really like my first thing for this week on this Monday morning. And I couldn't think of a better way to start the week out. So thanks for starting it with a highlight, my friend.
Well, I appreciate that. So this is the first episode of the BounceBack Leadership Show, where we talk about how we all go through things, and I've certainly gone through things, but you've gone through things, and other people have gone through things as well. But let's just dumb it down, not dumb it down. That sounds terrible. I hate when people say that. I don't like that. So if you could do me a favor and tell our audience what it is you think, or from your perspective, when is your first recollection of failing?
Oh man, that's such a good question. So, I mean, if I go back real early, like I was born like 3 weeks premature, so I failed to meet that deadline, like right out of the gates. rough. I mean, I really truly believe failure is like one of the fundamental building blocks of life. And so I can think of failures going all the way back. As far as I can remember, I was screwing things up. One of the most interesting one, or one of the first interesting ones though, was in Scouts. I would have been just 8 going 9-ish, somewhere in that region, and was a Cub Scout, pre-Boy Scouts, right? And man, I have this one memory of going to this scout camp, day camp thing, right? And they had this haunted house bit that you were supposed to go in. They were going to scare you. It was Indiana Jones themed, and the whole point was be brave, right? Face your fears. And about halfway through, I faked some sort of like allergy attack or something, like, oh, the smoke machines are making my eyes burn or something, because I was just terrified. And so I left the house early. I was the only one of all of my friends that decided to go through the little experience thing. And so that stuck with me for a while, because not only was it just a failure, but it wasn't even an accidental failure. It was an intentional failure. And, we could talk about kind of how that stuck with me. But I mean, that was, real early on. Young boy, Austin, already deciding to jump off the ride before it was over. And, it's an important lesson to learn, I suppose. But does that answer your question in enough detail, do you think?
I love it. I love it. That's great. I mean,
Good.
You're great. I mean, I love what you're saying. So if you want to hear more, stay right there.
Ooh.
Dude,
that intro.
Awesome.
I love that intro. Can I just say real quick that a radical vision is maybe the coolest business name I've ever heard in this industry. It's so great. So just props.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yeah. We've got some people on here I want to say hi to. Well, before we get started, there's Jacob McLeod, and he says hello. From Utah. Very nice.
From Utah, represent.
Hey,
that's where I'm at.
Where in Utah are you?
So I'm north of Salt Lake City, 50 miles, in a city called Layton, Davis County.
North of Salt Lake City by 40 miles.
Ish.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, Jacob, you let us know where you're coming in from in Utah, so we'll be more specific. And there's our friend Ken. Good morning, Ken. Good seeing you this morning from Toledo, Ohio. I'm a rocket myself. I went to the University of Toledo. That means I'm a rocket. I don't even know what that means, but anyway.
Toledo, Ohio. I have this weird association there. So before I got into the thought leadership space and software and the rest of it, my first real professional job was working in marketing for big box retail stores as like this third party lead generation company. And the big client that we worked with was Home Depot. And so there was at one point where we flew into, it would have been Detroit, I guess. And then I drove by myself the 2 hours or hour and a half or whatever it was down to Toledo, Ohio, and worked to the Toledo, Ohio Home Depots. And I must say, like, some of the nicest people ever. There was also this roundabout I remember that was like a dirt road in a construction zone. And I was in this little Ford Fusion, and I literally on accident drifted this car around this roundabout as a police officer was pulling up and like, he didn't even pull me over. This is how small town, awesome Toledo feels once you're there. But he just like watched me as I just did donuts around this thing, and I should have been arrested that day. But that's my memory with Toledo, Ohio. I'll probably never have another one, but it was a beautiful place. Funny. So represent.
That's funny. Hey, maybe Ken, you can let us know where you're coming from in Toledo. That would be cool. And if you've ever seen this roundabout that Austin is talking about.
Maybe he's the police officer. If you were the guy watching me.
You never know. He could have been. Wow, that's cool. So, Austin, you talked a little bit about your failure, intentional failure. I mean, that's quite a story. Tell us a little more.
Sure, about that experience specifically.
Yeah.
At the time I was an only child. Well, okay, that's not true. I was an only child up until I was 5, and then I had a little sister, and so I had like this probably like sense of egotism about me that was probably not justified, I guess you could say. But anyway, so I kind of felt like the whole world revolved around me and catered to my needs. And I think that that's probably part of where this came from. And, I say that it was a failure that I decided not to go through this haunted house, but it depends on the lens that you're looking at it through, right? Because ultimately, I think this is the thread about failure that goes untalked about, because failure is like talked about and seen as this painful experience that we have to go through to get better. And it's only painful depending on the perspective that you look at it through, right? So with this experience that I had as a Cub Scout, like on one hand, I chose to not be brave. I chose to leave the environment I was in, to, this is hyperbole, but leave my team to go through the horrible haunted house without me and hopefully survive on their own. On the other hand, like, I made the decision to not do something I didn't want to do. And so I think there's probably there's benefit there. But, I think that, like, the reason that stood out to me as I was thinking about what that first experience might be is that, like, it showed me that as a human, we have the ability to choose to do the hard thing that makes us better, or to do the easy thing that doesn't make us better, that makes us worse. And in that situation, I chose the easy path. And, I instantly regretted it. As soon as I was out, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, was I actually going to die going through? No, I was not going to die. It was going to be, I was going to get maybe a jump scare from some 14-year-old Boy Scout that was working there on a volunteer base or something, right? It was like, it was not going to be the end of my world. And so, like, I knew that logically coming out the other end of it. And so what the failure taught me was that, look, you have the ability to not face difficult things, but that doesn't mean that that's the choice you should make. You should make the choice to face the difficult thing, because it's probably not going to kill you. Maybe it will, but probably not. And you'll probably come out the other end at least being proud of the thing that you did, as opposed to feeling, shame that you chose the easy path. So,
yeah. This world is all about choices.
It is.
What's Ken have to say here?
Thanks, Ken.
That's nice. Fishtail.
No, famous last words.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. So, when have you experienced failure in your professional life?
Oh man, I try to fail as often as possible, and I mean that literally.
Now, you say that, but do you really mean that?
I do. Here's why, right? Because I talk about this analogy sometimes relating to business, although I think it's probably true just for being a human, just generally speaking. But people talk about, like, making progress the way that they talk about building a house. Like, it's this linear progression from I start with nothing and then I lay a foundation. Maybe this is a base skill set in some way or another. And then we put up the framing, we get our first bit of exposure and experience doing the thing. And now the framing's done and we can do some drywall, some plumbing, some electricity. And, like, you're putting all of these components together to ultimately end up with this beautiful house that you can live in. But I don't think that that's really reflective of what the process looks like to do anything meaningful in life. Instead, I think a better analogy would be that you're given, like, a giant, ugly chunk of marble. And inside of that chunk of marble is a beautiful statue, right? Something that the Renaissance men would be very proud of. But the way to get to the statue isn't by building from nothing. You've already got the thing. It's to carve away the excess, the stuff that you don't need. And then from there, you get your beautiful statue. And so when I say I try to fail as often as possible, that's what I mean, because failure to me is a much faster route to getting to the place that I want to be relative to successes, because successes ultimately you get lucky. Like, there's a lot more things that don't work that do work. And so I would rather just take action and then remove the things that aren't working, rather than sit pontificating about what the right thing may be someday and then eventually do that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm a big believer in action. And if you're going to take lots of action, then failure will just inevitably come along with that. And so I embrace it. In fact, the last thing that I'll mention on this note, but there's this wonderful guy out there named Gino Wickman, and he wrote this book called Traction, which is it elucidates this business framework he calls the entrepreneurial operating system. Thank you. That's the book right there. So anyways, there's a whole, it's such a good book. It's brilliant. I attribute a lot of our progress at Speakerflow to that book, but there's a whole culture that's emerged from the EOS world. And there's a podcast that they do that's just brilliant. But one of the implementers of EOS that they talk to on that show says that the purpose of EOS, and you can apply this to any business framework, isn't to be more successful. It's to fail faster, specifically because those failures teach you the lessons you need to be able to improve and then fail less down the road. So that's my philosophy on this.
It's not so much that you like to fail. You don't want to fail, but you want to try something, and you don't want to see what doesn't work.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I guess it depends on what we define as a failure, and maybe that's an important conversation to have before we go deeper. But yeah, I mean, I really think that like failure defined as trying something that doesn't work is the best possible thing that can happen if you're trying to improve quickly.
Yeah, much like our Facebook user here says. And Facebook user, if you would, let us know who you are. And let us know where you're coming in from. That would be great. If you want to, that's okay. But yeah, what you're saying is spot on.
It's true. So. It's the process of evolution at play, but in any other sense, right? The things that work continue forward. The things that don't work get you killed, and then the people that don't do that continue forward. So maybe that's a little bit of a extreme example, but it's the same process, iterative.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jill.
Jill. Thank you, Jill. Appreciate that. Well, this is good. This is great conversation. I had no idea. I shouldn't say that. I did have an idea because I know Austin. You're an awesome guy. But this
make me blush.
Yeah. So, how many times a day do you try to fail?
Well, that's a good question. I don't have like a numerical goal attached to it. We'll put it that way. But I mean, every day I do something that doesn't work out the way that I want it to. So, I mean, at least once a day I'm failing at something. And I guess I'm not out there specifically looking for a failure, right? I'm trying to get the best outcome that I can get. I accept the fact that failure will be an inevitable part of that, and I embrace it when it happens. So I'm not seeking a specific number, let's say. I'm just trying to do lots of stuff.
Yeah. Like for me, I mean, I have trouble embracing it. I have trouble, oh yeah, I failed. That's great. I don't feel that way. Yeah. Do you feel that way?
I mean, no, I think one of the big issues that society has today is very black and white thinking, that it has to be either X or it's Y, and it can't be both. But nothing in this world is just one thing. There's good and there's bad, and there's a mix of those things happening all the time. And so I think we can honor the emotional sense that something hurts when we fail and not pretend like it doesn't hurt, because it does. It sucks when we fail. Without going into a whole lot of detail, my company made a $22,000 mistake recently. We lost $22,000 like in a day, overnight. Totally unexpected, right? I can tell you full stop that when that happened, I was not jumping for joy. It was a painful thing. It hurts really bad. And then you have to think about logistics and all the implications attached to it. And there's security, right? Like you're hitting that we call it, between my partner and I, lizard brain mode. Like your emotional bells start going off in the back of your head, and actually clouds all of your logical thinking unless you can stop and slow down. And so there's no way I could sit here and honestly say like I'm always excited when failures happen. But with a moment of reflection, you can think about, okay, well, what is the good that came out of this? The good that came out of this situation where we lost a bunch of money is that we had to be a lot more careful about reading the terms and conditions, right? Like got to pay more attention. And though we want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, that doesn't mean that we have to, put our butts on the line for that. We can also take care of ourselves. So anyways, so I think we have to acknowledge the fact that failure hurts and is painful, and we can just feel those things, but also intentionally look for the good or the lesson that we can take away from it so that we can improve. And I find that if you can slow down enough to find what that improvement is, it actually makes the pain a little less severe. It's like, okay, well, I mean, here's what we're going to do differently next time. Like forward. It's all we can do is move forward,
That's good. So Jill Sullivan, I'm assuming it's still Jill. She says, I think your point is if you want to pursue anything in life, you just jump. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not worrying about the outcome, but enjoying the journey. Amen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
The outcome is a lot less worth it.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jill, you're in Utah as well. Maybe I'm wrong. Utah, right? Anyways, let us know where you're coming in from, Jill. That would be great. Oh, wow. I hadn't. Anyway, this is great. So, how does that make you feel when you fail? I mean, you talked a little bit about how you don't jump for joy. Initially, how did it make you feel?
I mean, it really depends on the severity of the failure, right? Because like I've had some big failures in my life, and I've also had some small failures.
Jill says Eber.
Oh, Heber, nice. That's a
Heber.
beautiful area. Yeah, I'm Jill. I'm in Layton, and it's a lot different than Heber, and maybe not for the better. So,
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, like I think there's like the stages of grief that you go through, and I think that you could probably apply that to any type of failure too. Like there's an initial shock, maybe there's some denial that it was a failure at all. Like, oh, maybe I'm reading this wrong. Maybe this worked out great. Probably didn't. It probably was a failure, but we like to be hopeful as humans. So there's an element of that, and you try to justify it and like make sense of it and see if there's anything that you can do to turn it around. And so like there's all these. It's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy, like when you fail, depending on how hard the failure is, like it takes you down to your basic securities where you're like questioning whether or not you're still a human and if it's okay. And like, if you're going to be able to heat your house and like, so there can be some pretty intense negativity around like whether or not you're going to be okay. And I think like if you're self-aware, I think this is maybe the most important part. Cause if you just let things run its course, your emotional brain will just stay in gear forever. You have to intentionally override that if you're going to make a negative feeling go positive. And so howdy. And so, yeah, I think like there's just an intentionality there where you have to feel the way that you're feeling, good or bad, honor it, acknowledge it, sit with it as long as you have to, and intentionally look for the way that it can be improved. And I think when that happens, the feeling goes from chaos or being scared or frustrated or angry or hopeless or whatever negative feeling is attached to that for you. And I think that can be very quickly turned into optimism and hope and excitement. And it's just a matter of whether or not you are able to reframe it. That's probably the core thing I'm actually trying to say here is that, if you intentionally reframe the situation, you can let yourself turn that negativity into positivity.
And that reframing happens because you have a different mindset, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, different mindset is, I feel like, a little bit hard because that's so abstract. Like, what's the practical implication here? Like, I think the thing that people can take away is that you have to train yourself to look for that silver lining, so to speak. You have to train that mindset out of yourself. And it could be as simple as just like catching yourself initially when you're in that lizard brain mode, like when you're in your emotional chaotic state because a failure has happened, like just acknowledging that, like, oh, I'm really frustrated by this right now. Okay, well, good to know. Noted, and then the more you level up that sense of self-awareness, now you can start to intentionally decide what you're going to do with it. So, and there's this core is really a simple thing. And this came out of this wonderful book that I've read a couple times called The Coaching Habit. But he talks throughout the whole book, there's this common theme of behavioral change. And the essence of behavioral change is being able to specify the behavior that you're currently taking, and then specify what you would like to be doing differently, and then state that in a way where it says, when whatever trigger happened that made me do this, I'm going to instead do this the next time the trigger happens. Maybe you don't catch it the next time, but if you can keep building on that, eventually your thought patterns change. And now you're not having to think so hard about looking at the silver lining because you've trained yourself to do so.
This is a coaching book?
Yeah, this is, yep. The book is called The Coaching Habit. And it's about coaching, but not from necessarily the sense of like a professional coach, but for leaders of teams and for people with relationships. So meaning everybody.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because coaching is kind of an important skill to have in life, I've found. But this book does a great job of some really practical takeaways. So good book.
Good. I love
Yep.
it. Great idea. I'm reading a book by Dan Sullivan right now called The Gap versus the Game.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been recommended that book like 5 times in recent weeks. Do you like it?
I love it. It's so
Yeah.
good. I'm doing the audiobook. So you get to hear Dan Sullivan talk a little bit at the end of each chapter, and he's got really good words of wisdom. So it's phenomenal. So
It's a good one.
yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to
Yeah.
audiobooks too, right? Oh man, what a way to make a media more approachable. I would read nothing if it wasn't for audiobooks. So
I go for a walk. I put in my earplugs. I listen to whatever book at the time.
Yep.
Gosh, I'm telling you, the book before that was "Put Your Ass Where Your Heart Wants to Be" by Stephen Pressfield.
I love Pressfield. He's great, but that's a funny
Yeah.
book name. I've never heard of that before.
Very good book. Very good book. So I recommend that one as well.
Nice. Brian, we should start a book club.
I know. It's a great idea.
Right.
Okay. We'll put that on a shelf for now. But yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
Anyway, so we've got. Oh my gosh, we've got just 3 minutes left.
Wow, that went fast.
Yes, it did. So tell me, you're awesome. You have so much going on. You're doing so well. You have blind spots. There's still things you don't see. And we talked a little bit about how you need to read the fine print a little bit better. But who else sees your blind spots?
Oh man, that's such a great question. So, I mean, it depends on the area of life, right? Like there's no one person that kind of holistically can help me sort my stuff out. My wife is probably the one that's closest to me. She's constantly telling me about the things that I'm not seeing, which is extremely helpful.
Is it helpful? Because sometimes a spouse is too close to really have that impact.
Yeah. Again, it depends on the aspect of my life that I'm needing help in, right? Because my wife sees a very raw version of myself, and so she can help me see things about me that are true at the truest sense of the word, whatever. My business partner Taylor is obviously another big component here, though similarly to my wife, we're both very much attached to the same outcomes, and so there's things that he doesn't see there. So probably like the most useful person in my life, his name is Brad Ferris. He runs an organization called Anchor Advisors. A brilliant man, just one of the kindest souls on the planet, and also very knowledgeable. And he's my coach. And I've been working with him, Taylor and I both, for going on 3 years now. We're at over 3 years now. Yeah, since we started Speaker Flow almost. And he fills this role for me where I'm in lizard brain mode, and so I can just show up and brain dump on him, and in an hour he can just like reorient me and like help me see the things that I'm not seeing and or think about things differently than I do now. And that's I will say too that type of relationship isn't a quick fix relationship. It's like going to therapy. It's actually very similar to therapy. I've experienced that too, in a personal sense, and it takes time to sort of build a relationship with somebody to the point where that trust is established so that you can hear somebody when they're pointing out their blind spots, really hear them and want to do something with the information that they're pointing out, and that guy's really changed my business. So find somebody that is not personally connected to you, ideally a totally neutral third party that doesn't know you, and invest in building a relationship with them to the point where when they speak to you, you can hear them authentically. I think that's the best version of this. That person is the tough thing to find, but fail up, find the wrong person a few times and then you'll find the right person.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about therapy. I've wanted to, I don't want to, but I wanted to do something else out of myself, and I wanted to get to a point where I um, went to therapy because I know going through what I've gone through, I need to have somebody help me to see something better. Not that I'm negative and all that, but I know that there's good that will come from therapy, and I'm doing that next Monday.
Wow. Good for you, Brian.
Yeah,
That's an important step.
that's not easy for me to say, not easy for me to admit, but it means a lot. So
That's
anyway,
huge. You're taking care of yourself.
yeah,
And there's so many resources available. And there's been this stigma attached to that kind of work for a long time. And it's starting to dissipate. I'm seeing more and more. It's like less weird to talk about. But, so just for the people listening to this, right, Brian, I'm glad you found a solution for yourself. But anybody that needs that type of person, like that's the definition of what a therapist does. There's an awesome organization called BetterHelp. I think it's betterhelp.com. It's virtual therapy. You are assigned a dedicated therapist. You can call them, you can text them, you get a meeting every single week with them, unlimited access to this therapist. And I think for a lot of people, it's actually less about like the stigma or not wanting to talk, but it's like, how do you work something like that into your schedule? And for me, I found that being able to just do it from anywhere on my phone was the thing that allowed that to be possible, and then helped me see the value so that I would prioritize it more. So I think anybody could benefit from that. And that's very much geared towards the personal side of things. But then a business coach, if you're in the professional side of things, like those two functions, I think are very helpful for anybody that's trying to improve their life.
yeah. Oh yeah, you've added so much value here today, Austin. I'm so glad you came on and got the chance to meet with our folks. If there's anybody out there that has questions, you can certainly ask them now, or send me a note later, or just comment on this text and let us know if you have any questions. Austin, is there anything you want to leave our audience with here today that you haven't already done?
I mean, I don't know if I have any final thoughts the way, so no, I guess, but I mean, just to like round out the whole theme of this show, like be excited by the potential and the opportunity to improve when bad things happen. There's never a situation that arises where we can't take something positive away from it if we're willing to try. So bounce back, people.
Awesome. I love it. Way to go.
Yeah.
Very cool. Hey, Austin, I'm going to let you go to the green room. If you won't mind hanging out there for a little bit, I'll be right back.
I'll be there. Bye, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
See ya.
See ya. Oh, I am so grateful to have Austin on, and I'm sure you are as well. If there's ever anything that we can do for you, please let us know. We want to make sure that we're adding value to you every day, and that is what we will do. So just keep it on. I love having you on. I love being able to talk with you all. If there ever, again, just anyway, not sure how to close out the show, because I'm not going to close it out with keep one eye on the road. We're gonna close out the show differently. So we're gonna figure out how to best do that. But overall, we had a great first show. Thank you so much for joining in. Take care.